Cheese, episode 499. I'm your Joe Dix, joined by Mark Augustiniak.
Hey.
Matt Sellner.
Hello.
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. Episode 499. In this here season 11 of our fine podcast is celebrating Rogue, the classic video game that has inspired many to follow. Before we dive in, talk about our experience with and rank Rogue on the list. I've actually got a public service announcement, not a question for either of you. How about that for a change? You know how normally you listen to a podcast and you get all the way to the end, and these people do all these plugs, they tell you to follow this and do that and use our discount code and whatever. I thought about that, and I thought, hey, you know what's cool? We've been doing the show for 11 years now, right? Yes, 11 years. Never had, the only ads we ever had on the show were to just tell people about our friend who was on the show with us, who made an amiibo tracking app. He didn't get any money for it. It was just a thing you could go use if you were also on the hunt for amiibo. Like, we weren't actually, that was the only time there was an ad, if you will. But even that was just like, we wanted to promote our friend's thing. But I thought it would be important to bring up at the top of this show, maybe, in dedication to a video game, what started as a freely distributed piece of software. We just hang out every week. I can't stand whenever I've removed all podcasts from my life and all of that stuff that are just like, hey, do this, follow, click, buy, bet. I hate all of it now. And whenever I hear it, I'm always happy that we don't have all of that garbage within our own little environment. So if you, listener, also appreciate that, and you're like, hey, I hadn't thought of that. That's a pretty good idea, or a pretty good thing to call out. Tell a friend about the show and say, hey, here's a podcast you might like, and here's a podcast that doesn't tell you to buy socks for men. Or whatever else. Maybe that's our opening question. What's the worst thing you've been recommended to buy on some idiot's podcast?
Not buy, watch. I don't remember. I don't even remember the names of the shows. But they
I don't want you to promote the show.
No, well, that's good because I don't remember the name. They were ads for shows on Facebook Watch.
Oh man!
And the
Jada
ads
Pinkett show?
No, it was. I don't know. They were bad. They were the ads were so bad that I would instead of skipping ahead like any normal human being would, I'd listen to them because they were so funny to listen to because they were so bad.
Maybe you need a hobby. Like, should you learn how to knit or something so that you're not spending so much time watching things like that?
I'm not watching it. I'm
I thought you did watch it.
No. No. I listened to the ads.
Got it.
I would not skip the ads because the ads were so atrocious that they were hysterical to me.
I think I misheard. Okay. I thought you said you'd watched the show. Because
I did ultimately. It's funny, though. I did ultimately end up stop listening to them because they really kept... the advertisements went up. They used to do that like once in the middle, and then it started happening like 3 times. And I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And I'm not giving you $1 on Patreon.
And I get it, right? This is some people's full-time jobs where this is definitely not for us, but... man, it sucks. It just sucks all the fun out of living.
Yeah, it's kind of scary where just anywhere you go, you're just surrounded by advertisements. And I have a little weird, like, I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it like don't want to say conspiracy theory outright, but something with ads is what's a little odd that I've noticed is that if you're watching YouTube or something, right, and you have to like sit through 2 ads and you want to bite your phone because of it, if you saw a commercial for something, you can't look it up and show it to someone like, look at this stupid ad I found. You cannot YouTube search those commercials. They only pop up for these videos. There's no way to acquire these. So they could just show whatever they want and get away with it. Like, there's no like paper trail unless you're like screen recording your phone and it lets you like capture it or something. But you're not thinking about it because you just want it done and over with. But like, it's so bizarre how like that's a thing. And I kind of feel, my theory is that no matter how shitty your connection is with your phone somewhere, ads will always run smoothly, but the rest of the video sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I will subscribe to that crackpot theory, if we'll go as far as call it. Yeah, that's a full... It doesn't matter. There's something piped in where they code that into the app to make it, I do appreciate all the alternative, like, websites that pull the API from different things, and you can pipe things through those. Those are nice to subvert all those. So check that out, children of the internet. And tell a friend about the Free Cheese podcast. There's your ad. That's the one ad. It's just to tell people about the thing you're listening to. And I say that not for our benefit, but for theirs, because I think we've got a pretty dang good podcast, and I would want more people to hear it in that regard. Also, I think it's important that you recommend things to your friends that you think they might like, because that's how friendships continue. That's why the three of us are still here after all this time. Wouldn't you know it? And even though there's not we don't have our fourth, our friend Ben, on the show, we still talk to Ben all the time because of stupid things we find and recommend to one another. Just like two friends, Michael Toy and Glenn Wickman, along with Ken Arnold later on, met back in probably the 70s, but in 1980 came together and developed a video game called Rogue. Originally published by themselves, if you'd call it that, because it was just a freely distributed game around the campus that was eventually baked into the operating system that you would connect to at their university. However, the game was commercially ported under the company named AI Design, which was Michael Toy, Glenn Wickman with John Lane, and they received financial support from a company called Epix. And if you're right now trying to look up Rogue to play it in the modern era, you are more than likely finding the Steam version of the Epix port or the archive.org version of the Epix port. And that's Epix with a YX at the end. That's probably the most popular version of it, although there's been many. This was first released on Unix-based systems, and then it would later get ported to many different PCs, including stuff like the Atari ST, where it would have full graphics. 1980 was the first year of release. The back of the box, now this seemed to be from the DOS version, but I thought it was a nice description from the back of the box. They also had like a nice manual with little drawings and images. This is one of our longer back of the box readings, so crack one open and sit back. Deep in the dungeons of doom, you're fighting a hungry and powerful troll for your life. You've avoided other creatures' blows before, but the troll swings and scores a hit that weakens you. Hoping to regain health, you find and quaff a magic potion. Great Yendor! It's the wrong one! The potion blinds you. But wait! Drawing an enchanted sword from your pack, you swing blindly at the troll and strike a fatal blow. As you grope in the dark for the troll's gold, something hits you. A nymph steals your magic ring, a ring that could be crucial in your quest for the amulet of Yendor. Rogue introduces a new generation of adventure games different from any you have ever encountered. Unlike other games, Rogue presents a fresh challenge every time you play, no matter how long or how often you play. You don't succeed by memorizing events, but only by honing your character's skills. You must combine magic, weaponry, and determination to gain the Amulet of Yendor and escape the Dungeons of Doom. Rogue keeps the action fast and non-stop by displaying and mapping out each of the many dungeon levels you'll explore, and Rogue is so full of unpredictable monsters, ever-changing magic, and hidden dangers that it's never the same game twice. No wonder Rogue is the most popular game running under the Unix operating system. Then it says, don't wait to challenge yourself. Yeah, so do we jump right into roguelike versus roguelite versus do we do that now or do you want to wait and do that?
We might as well.
So I'm curious. There's
No,
I don't think there's a right answer for this. Truly, from what people like, it seems like this is pedantic in the least, but also like depending on where you align with rogue history and all of that, and where you kind of came into this, you might have very varied replies to this. So I guess, do either of you have a definition of what roguelike is to you?
Roguelike? Yeah. I think if the majority of the game is based around randomization, just like randomly or like if it's like procedurally generated stages or whatever, whether it's procedurally or randomly, if there's a difference with that, I would say that falls under the roguelike category. Where it's just basically if the game has it to where every run that you do is basically a new game in a sense. I think that is as basic as you can get with it.
I think the permadeath part is the rogue. Well, because there's something like roguelike. Yeah, the random procedurally stuff, but like you die and you gotta start over again.
Yeah, I guess they go hand in hand. Like you need them both together.
Yeah, like you can do permadeath in the game, but if it's the same thing over and over, that's not. Yeah, I would consider that. The permadeath though, I think is needed.
There are, again, many interpretations of roguelike. I would say, prior to really diving into stuff, my understanding or approach to it was, combining elements you just described, right? Randomly generated permadeath, like no progression overall. You just sort of, you're always starting from scratch, and the idea is that you, the player, are becoming more experienced, not the character in the game. That was like the broadest understanding of it in that sense. Thankfully, in 2008, at the International Roguelike Development Conference 2008, everyone who attended sat down to define the 13 roguelikeness factors definition, which was shared online at roguelike.development. In 2008. There's a very long list of kind of why, etc. This is what's become known now as the Berlin interpretation. So just jot that down in your notebooks. I will give you here's the basic tenets of what they point out here. So they posit that roguelike refers to a genre, not merely a game that is like Rogue. The genre is represented by its canon, and the canon for roguelike pulls from Adom, Angband, Crawl, NetHack, and Rogue. The list of factors that make up a roguelike, as defined here, they basically say that you can use this list of factors to weigh how much of a roguelike a game is based on how much or how many of these elements it contains. So number 1 is random environment generation. Number 2 is permadeath. Number 3 is turn-based. Number 4 is grid-based. Number 5 is non-modal, so meaning that your battle and other actions take place in the same mode. Every action should be available at any point in the game. That idea. So like no shops, no those types of things. Complexity. The game has to have enough complexity to allow several solutions for common goals. Resource management. You should have limited resources. Hack and slash is a key tenet. the game is player versus world. There are no monster versus monster relations. Exploration and discovery are you should be carefully exploring dungeon levels to discover usage of unidentified items. So everything I just named are all high value factors in rating a roguelike, the low value factors, but still important. Single player character, you should only be controlling one character, there's not a party. Monsters should be similar to players, so all the rules that apply to the character or the player character apply to the monster. They should have inventories, they should have equipment, they should use items, cast spells, etc. There should be tactical challenge, meaning that you should understand the tactics within the game before being able to make any significant progress. The idea that dying and repeating is all part of the process is integral into the game. They also point out that, again, this is on the low value factors, but an ASCII display is, in their interpretation, required. So using, non-graphic art in this place. Dungeons are also important. You should have dungeons composed of rooms and corridors, and then numbers. So numbers used to describe the character, its hit points, attributes, etc., should be deliberately shown throughout gameplay. And those are the key tenets of the Berlin interpretation. Now, of course, immediately there are people who opposed it.
Yeah, what's America's interpretation of the rules? Because, we had to defy the whole metric system over here, so...
It's true. That's how they broke it down, and there's a great video game podcast that I was drawn to because Nick Sutner used to work at PlayStation. Nick Sutner was part of the PlayStation blogcast and was great on there, and he was at 1UP and everything before. And he's part of a podcast now called, their name changed now. Name is now Eggplant, The Secret Lives of Games. It originally was called the Spelunky Show-like because it was a podcast about Spelunky in anticipation of Spelunky 2's release. But with its release, they switched it to Eggplant, The Secret Lives of Games, still kind of paying tribute to Spelunky, but often just interviewing and talking to people about the games they make. But usually still talking roguelike games in a way. Hearing that podcast, there was an interesting point of view brought there. So they talked with Reagan Burns, who was one of the co-creators of N and N++ and N+ as well. And on that podcast, it was pointed out that to sort of dismiss games that are like Rogue, or rather to call things roguelikes that are not like Rogue, kind of detracts from all of the games that try to be like Rogue, like NetHack and like everything else. And he did not seem to align with the wider adoption of the term in sort of pop video game culture. Going as far as to say, like, Spelunky was not a roguelike. And he wanted to see more people say that, like, that Spelunky was Spelunky, and more people now are making Spelunky-likes and less roguelikes. It's again, this gets all crazy and whatever. The one quote from that podcast I pulled that I thought was, I think, relevant to our conversation is that imagine if instead of calling those video games first-person shooters, we called them all Doom-likes, right? But Call of Duty and Titanfall, it's a bad example because they're pretty similar, but name some other first-person shooter, I don't know.
Wolfenstein and Call of Duty.
Right. They're all very different games. First-person shooter makes sense, but to call them a Doom-like, neither of those are like Doom. Doom is fast and down the middle. Like, you know what I mean? You know what Doom is and how Doom feels and how Doom plays. So I liked that I did feel like listening to that episode was very like maddening, just hearing everyone kind of go back and forth about what is, what isn't, what should be, what should not be, because at the end of the day, these things are all fluid. Like the way that we used to look at things with progression systems as having RPG elements, like everything has a progression system now, so it's Fortnite and RPG. You know what I mean? Like it's the battle pass in RPG. Like it's really granular. But I did like the idea
that term is thrown around all the time too now.
That came, yeah, but like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, they were all just going back to Mario 1. You know what I mean? Like, is Demon Souls a Mario like?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's where we also get the term roguelite, which has become popular now. I think I'm not going to spend too much longer on this, but I think it was good that we got this out of the way up front. I think generally I just refer to things as roguelikes just because it cuts through, right? Just like Metroidvania is a terrible... It's not a good name for that genre, but you know exactly what it is, right, at that point. And it's just a matter of how Metroidvania-ish is it, right? So roguelite has been described as something that is roguelike, that has randomized areas, permadeath, etc., but there's progression within runs. So Dead Cells, it would be a roguelite, because yes, you're dying, yes, you're starting over from scratch, but you're gaining permanent upgrades throughout the game. And in fact, that game itself is kind of like, it's almost required that you do many runs and upgrade your character so that you can get further.
And I guess like on a broader topic with this type of, with this gamer language, I feel like depending on your circles and who you know is like when you should even use these terms. Like I think it's good for like just like between friends or other people, like if you who are have experience with video games or whatever, like it makes sense to use these terms. But if you're trying to talk to somebody who doesn't really play a lot of video games, this falls on deaf ears, basically. Like you have to be more vague, I guess, and broad about what you're describing, because to compare it to another game is pointless to most of them. So like I try not to use them as like as least as possible. But I do think it's good. I think they're good easy terms for people if if they know what they know. But I don't think it should ever be used for advertisements.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like it's tough, like when you scroll through Steam and you see the tags of like roguelike Metroidvania, a roguelike Metroidvania, all those things that are just like but it does cut through. Jeez. Right? Like it does, it gets you, it gets the information out there, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the end,
but like those terms, like Mark, you're right though. Like between us, Joe saw something on Steam, he liked it, he was like, oh, it's this is a roguelike. We know exactly what that means, and I can already say, like, if I'm not in the roguelike mood, I can be like, nah, fuck that, or whatever.
Yeah,
it does work though if you're talking to people that have kind of like an ear to the ground. Like
when Slay the Spire came out, and it was like, what's Slay the Spire? Oh, it's a deck building roguelike. Like, oh, okay, I get it.
Got it. Yeah,
it makes sense. But
like you will never have a racing game be like, oh, it's F-Zero like. It's like, no, it's. I mean, you might, but if anything, you're just gonna. If anything, people will just either call it a ripoff or a successor or something. But like a racing game is always a racing game. It's never anything else specific.
Yeah, that's true. Can you imagine if everything were Need for Speed likes? Or Forza is a Gran Turismo like.
Or I was going to say, have you all heard of this pole position successor F-123?
Yeah, exactly.
It gets silly.
So roguelike, roguelite, rogue-ish, like rogues, whatever you'd like to call it. We are talking about the original Rogue. And I added this to our list this year, and I'm going to be honest with the two of you and our listening audience. I was all over the place. I knew that I wanted to have a roguelike on the list this year for me. It's a genre that I was probably introduced to with Spelunky's probably the earliest one I can remember falling in love with and getting it. Not going back into the hole of whether or not that is or is not a roguelike, but of that ilk, that was what drew me in. I think, like many people, that was very quick, easy way to widely grab people's attentions to something they had not seen before was Spelunky. I can't recall anything prior to that I would have played, other than, fleeting. But maybe Fatal Labyrinth. I might have toyed around with that a bit on one of those Genesis collections. Anyway, besides that, when entering this year and putting together the list for this year, I had Fatal Labyrinth on my list. I don't think Spelunky made my short list of 70 games that went into consideration, because Spelunky to me was like one of those ones like Symphony of the Night that's like, I feel like anything that's like in my top 5 I don't want to put on this list, at least not yet, because I didn't want to do it so early in the list while we had, so much other ground to cover. And we've probably definitely talked about the games on my top 5, top 10, top 15 for a decade now. So I wanted to try and flesh it out a bit. And I went through and I looked at NetHack, I looked at Rogue. There's some other there. I will spoil a bit for the listener. There's still something else on my list coming up this year that I wanted to show the evolution of roguelikes in a way. So there's something else that we'll play later on that is one that you might not expect, but it is a roguelike, I suppose. And then I just started thinking about it. I was like, we should just play Rogue. Like it should be Rogue. That should be the game that pops on there. So that's kind of the why. Also, I'd never really played Rogue. I've played, at this point, post Spelunky, I've gone back through, and I have spent a ton of time with Fatal Labyrinth. I've spent a bunch of time with Dragon Crystal on the Game Gear. I've played a bunch of other games like that, but never any of, I guess, what would be considered by the Berlin interpretation, a roguelike with ASCII art and all the traditional, not outside of something that was, again, fleeting. Just something that I'd play around with for a bit and move on from, but never actually doing what we do here, where we really dive in, get to know a game, enjoy it, and then rank and review it. So I did that this time around, and it's funny. It's like when I first watched The Godfather. It was after decades of seeing South Park parodies and Simpsons parodies and all of these things, where once you see that movie, you're like, oh, that was the I get it. And same thing, I didn't see the first Star Wars until I was I don't know, 26 or something. And same deal. By the time I watched that movie, I was like, oh yeah, I get it. I know all this stuff because it's been everywhere, right? How can you not? So going back to something like Rogue in 2023 for the very first time, it's weird because there's nuances to Rogue that you don't know going into it, but you just kind of intuitively know what to do in this game because so many games have learned and adapted this type of gameplay. I've even in making little tutorials and stuff you are more than likely have been, if you've ever played around with game making stuff, you've walked through the basic beginning blocks of building a roguelike, and it just becomes sort of, it's a genre. It's a thing. It's very easy to wrap your head around. Initially, you walk your way through a room, you bump into enemies, you push in the direction toward the enemy to attack them. You will find items, you'll equip items, and you just kind of continue going through the dungeon until either you're dead or you find stuff to make it back out. Yeah. Yeah, what was my first sit down, let me play this was very much just a lesson in familiarity, I suppose. It was not I was more surprised at the names of the enemies I was fighting than I was of the actual gameplay and actions. And I was sort of like wrapping my head around like, okay, I need to actually open my inventory. I need to read that. I need to equip that. I need to, that kind of stuff. But how about you guys? What was your first, like, entering this game for the first time? And this is not your first time if you've played it before now. But yeah, Mark, why don't we start with you? What was your reaction to Rogue?
Oddly nostalgic, because I never played it.
Mm-hmm.
But it, like, because it uses, it's a DOS game, it just made me think back to when I would play computer games at my elementary school. And so it gave me that sense of feeling starting it up and like playing it. And then I quickly realized that this is not a user-friendly game. You probably need some form of manual to play this game and to actually understand what you're doing and what everything means, because it is very is crude the right word? I'm not sure. Maybe maybe not crude. Has very primitive visuals.
Yes,
and
I don't.
And
did we really emphasize that yet? Like, and really spell that out for someone who maybe is not.
You mentioned how did you say it? I usually said it
ASCII.
AS. Yeah, I've always spelled it out, but yeah.
Yeah, like you are in the original version of the game. You're an @ symbol. And this, the version that's commonly out there, the Epic's published version, you are like a little yellow smiley face.
Yeah.
But you were an @ symbol, and all of the enemy characters were and still are in this version represented by letters of the alphabet. So there's 26 monsters in the game, and there's one from A through Z. And that's what you fight, is letters.
Yeah. And so, like, half the game was me just trying to figure out what each key on the keyboard does.
Yeah.
That was a rough time trying to figure all that. I still don't know what half of it is. It took me a bit to understand how to go through stairs. So to realize that the lines meant stairs, and then hitting insert on the keyboard to go through stairs.
Yeah.
But I guess I kind of speed ran the game. I just wanted to see how far I would go if I just kept running into stuff and not using. I think I used a potion maybe like twice.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had a mace equipped the whole time and just beat the crap out of anything that came my way until I would die. And then I was like, okay, I guess from that standpoint, from not knowing, just jumping in, that's about as much as I'm probably going to get out of it, because I think it's a game that requires a lot of imagination, like a text adventure. And I think this might require a little too much for me, but I still oddly like what it is. It's a game that definitely needs some studying. Like, you actually, like you got to do some reading for this. I think that's a big requirement.
Yeah, you can't really, like, go in blind. Yeah. You should read at the very least, like, my first session with it, when I went through that too, where I was like, what is happening? And then spend 3 minutes and hit F1 and read the actual, like, help commands in game. And that'll start to shape at least what you can do. But even then, in the heat of the moment, you will forget what you're supposed to do. Granted,
I didn't even. No, sorry. I was just saying, like, funny enough, I was hitting all the keys. I avoided all the F buttons for some reason.
Just I only knew because I like. No, I didn't even realize from whatever. I think I banged it and was like, what's the in-game, like, menu? Like, what's the thing? And I saw it was F1. That was the only reason I think I knew it. But yeah, you do that, and even then, like, you get caught up in sort of what you expect it to be rather than what it is. I think you have to fight with that a good bit, but in time it starts to click and make sense. And the one thing I really appreciated is you can take your time, and there's a reason for that I learned listening to that aforementioned Eggplant podcast. They interviewed Glenn Wickman about the creation of Rogue, and I learned an interesting fact from that. We'll talk about it in a bit, but I think there's a reason why you are meant to take your time and be intentional with each move that you make. But you can stand still and time stand still. But the second you move, anything on the map that is meant to move moves in their, designated direction, and will continue on whatever path they're meant to be on. So if there's an enemy in the map that knows you're there and is coming for you, if you move, it moves toward you. Whether that's close or far as well, depending on their range of sight, and that's all, varied and whatever. Matt, what about you? What was your first dive into the game? Get acclimated.
I knew what the interface looked like. So the graphics didn't really. I kind of knew what that looked like. Maybe not exactly what it would be, but I knew it'd be similar. But I didn't realize how many buttons there were going to be in this game. Which I for some reason I was very much preparing to buy the Steam version of this game and figure out how to map the controls to my backbone so I can just play this casually on a couch. And boy, was I fucking wrong on that decision. I ended up playing this on the archive.org website. And I'm glad I did it before I bought it. I mean, it's not much, but I'm glad I did it before I bought it, thinking I'm going to backbone this entire game, because it's just not possible. Yeah, it is. I did. Yeah, I think I also Googled whatever, searched, and found out that F1 can get you a help key, and then that's when finally things opened up, and I was able to play at least a little bit there. But yeah, I immediately appreciated the level of. I never thought I would say this, but I immediately appreciated how much guidance a game like Dark Souls gives you immediatly.
Yeah,
I never thought I would say that ever. I don't want to. I have the word in my review obtuse. So that's just because I'm poor with the English language. But you're just kind of thrown into this, and you're expected to learn, and it's going to take hours upon hours of learning it if you're doing it on your own. I ended up watching. I probably spent more time watching people run this game so I could understand it, to talk about it, because I would never gotten there. I would not have felt comfortable talking about it until I actually saw what a good player looked like. And yeah, there's a lot here. For the hardware that this game is on, it might not have the graphic interface, but as far as gameplay mechanics, it is all there and stuff you see today. It's turn-based, and you don't necessarily have all the pretty animations. You just have a little line of text at the top that you have to hit spacebar to see the next sequence of. It's a real interesting history lesson. I think I experienced playing this.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So I take it you didn't beat it, Matt? Mark, did you beat it?
You can beat it?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Neither did I, but it's okay because neither did the creator of Rogue. He admitted that on that podcast. Not as even any point of shame, but just he programmed it. They obviously tested to see how things would work or whatever, but going from beginning to end and all of that, never actually
fly in Mario Maker.
Who what?
So that wouldn't fly in Mario Maker because you gotta beat your creations to
yeah,
publish
you've
them.
got to get it out there. Yeah, but
is it 26 levels, or was that another port I was watching?
Oh, I never paid attention to that.
I didn't see anyone beat it, but the person was talking about the 26th level. But I was watching a slightly different. Well, that guy's run was a slightly different port.
Hey, I have a question. Rogue has become obviously a genre or subgenre of video games, right?
Yeah, Berlin told us.
Right. How would you Then how do you describe Rogue? Because I would just call it a dungeon crawler.
Yeah, I would say that this is a dungeon crawling adventure game, is how I would put it.
It is the like-ish of all the rogues.
It's yeah. I guess I will reveal the other part that I learned on that podcast. This was actually inspired by. Actually, do either of you know the game that this was inspired by?
No, but I want to guess.
Yeah.
This came out what year?
This came out in
80.
1980.
Okay. For some reason, I'm thinking of an Atari game, but I don't know what years, if that's after or before.
Do you know that? Do you know the Atari game? Are you binging it?
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. I'm just...
No. I'm gonna give you time to do that. See if Matt has it. Oh, you gotta go.
Found it. Adventure.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
guess.
adventure influenced this for sure. You know, because
that
that did have similar like letter. It's not the answer.
Fuck.
It's not the shocking answer that I thought.
Yeah. I thoroughly, out of the little Atari games, I actually did enjoy that one a lot.
Yes. Yeah, adventure's cool. Matt, you have a guess?
No, I knew it was a text-based. So I had seen it before. I wouldn't have known it. But I did know it was text-based.
So the game I'm actually referring to is called Chess.
Oh,
That influenced the development of Rogue.
Never heard of it.
Chess it's like a checkers like, but
Oh, okay. I can get with that.
yeah, they just use different pieces.
Yeah.
So it's chess because the way that the developers viewed Rogue is a 2-player game. You move, they move, you move, they move, you move, they move. You take as much time as you need to think about your next move. You should be tactful, and you should be thinking about every move you're going to make. When you look at, a room in one of Rogue's dungeons, when you enter the room and you see where everything is, you do need to start learning how each character, or rather monster, what its movement patterns are, just like in chess. And you need to start thinking, if I step to the right, the snake's going to do this, the hobgoblin's going to do this, the emu's going to do that. You need to know all those things kind of all the way through before you make or take your step. If you're going to cast a spell, if you're going to use a sword, all of the things that could happen, you need to think that stuff through.
That's pretty neat. And then chess is kind of based on war, right? Like, it's a warlike, which is based on life. So Rogue, essentially, is lifelike.
Exactly. Rogue is the game.
Figured it out.
Yeah. Actually, what's life then? I don't know.
Oh, that's what, Parker Brothers?
Yeah, that was that.
Yeah.
goal is to become an accountant to make the most money.
Yeah, you get like 3 station wagons filled with kids.
No, see, that was the thing. You didn't do the kids, then you had all the money. You didn't have to pay for their colleges or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
You gotta get the khakis, then you get the, yeah. But yeah, so overall, I mean, Rogue is one of those games that just kind of, I think, is and always will be. While, yeah, I think, Matt, your adjective of obtuse, I think, is apt in this case. The thing I had with Rogue, though, and this is, with every game that we play on this list, I always try to return to that era and put myself there and like really sink into like playing it as a contemporary and remember it. This is one of those rare instances of a game on the list that's older than we are. So it's difficult to remember, it's impossible to remember what it was like when it released, obviously. But I think also like it's tough because so many games that I love and enjoy, and now I've gone back to, like, where maybe I hadn't played Fatal Labyrinth back in its release on the Genesis and whatever, but I played Fatal Labyrinth a ton in the last 10, 15 years. Just like hours and hours messing around with that one and other things inspired by Rogue. I've played a ton of like this type of stuff. I think even games like Etrian Odyssey or any other dungeon crawling thing, even the original Phantasy Star, like going through dungeons there, although they're not randomized, like all of those types of things that do have a little bit more of intensity to it, where you can just kind of let yourself wander through dungeons and find out what's there. All of that stuff ultimately for me ends up being more attractive, I think, for a lot of reasons, but like mostly the sound. Like I can even deal with the art, which sounds really shallow to say deal with the art, but because I did find myself, the deeper I got into this game, the more I was picturing, like I have a bat in my head, what the bat looks like to me. The emu in my head it's my emu, and I do really love this game for that aspect, right? Like all of these monsters that are in the game are my monsters, which I really appreciate. All the potions, like I had different images for what they looked like as I held it. Like it's very imaginative, it's very evocative of like playing Dungeons and Dragons in that regard, where you're just like imagining and building this world kind of with the game itself kind of becomes the dungeon master and you're the participant, and also it's a weird sort of interactive experience in that regard. But ultimately, yeah, at the end of the day, like there's part of me that just kind of wanted to play something a little more evolved, knowing that people had done that already, which isn't fair to Rogue, because Rogue is Rogue, and you wouldn't have so many things if it weren't for Rogue. But yeah, and I'm only like starting to kind of introduce this, like, you know, kind of tailwind or whatever that we're doing here, because I know we have to rank this at some point, and I feel, I don't know, I'm getting ahead of myself a bit, but it's tough to really look at this against everything else, I think, because it's incredibly important in the history of games. And on its own, it's still super fun, and I think deep and whatever. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was just like, well, what games are like Rogue that I could play? Right? Like I spent more time.
Yeah, that's exactly where I landed. Like there's a game here. I don't have the time to sink into this to really learn it and try to beat it. Like I'd rather see what else the genre has to offer.
Yeah, and in the lead up to us recording, I spent more time playing DRL than I did Rogue, which DRL was also another game that was on my short list too.
Yeah, Joe, we know every game was on your fucking short list.
Yeah, but DRL.
How many times you said that this year? That game was on my short list.
You might like it.
Yeah, it existed.
The short list of 670 games.
Look, 70's pretty short in the pantheon of all video games. No, but DRL is short for Doom Roguelike. And Doom Roguelike it's the same thing. You're moving arrow keys around the thing. You're picking up items with, G to ground and F to fire, R to reload. But you're playing Doom, but as Rogue. It's super cool. I'm gonna drop links to all that stuff so everybody can check it out. But yeah, those things are. There's a Diablo roguelike, and actually the Diablo roguelike doesn't have graphics. It's back to ASCII art. But the Doom roguelike is actually it's art by Derek Yu, who made Spelunky, and it's a little Doom guy, all the little imps and everything shooting fireballs at you, and like when the imp shoots a fireball, you see like a grid of 9 like highlight around your character, because that's the area of effect. Like that stuff I think it's still keeping true to the original form of Rogue, but it adds a little bit more to it. Really, like, sound makes such a difference in a video game. You wouldn't think that always, even though, but
yeah, what's the sound like in this game?
Yeah, there is none. It made it really hard to give it a score for sound.
I didn't know what to give it. I gave it a 5 in sound because I don't know what to do, because you can't you can't get mad at it for not having sound. Think of what it came out on.
Yeah, I know.
That was the toughest part of this, was giving it reviewing it.
Yeah,
I guess it depends. Like if other games around that time were able to produce sound in a similar platform, and you just didn't do it, I don't know. I think that deserves some
but
judgment.
computers didn't have speakers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
That's the.
Yeah.
Just make noise out of the floppy disk drive.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I ended up having more fun just kind of like listening to stuff while I played it, and like,
yeah,
I don't know. We've played some. I'm gonna pull up the list because we got to rank this thing soon. I think we're getting there, but we've played some games this year that I've gone back to since we wrapped up recording. But this is one I do think I'll keep poking at. I just wish like I want to put it on the analog pocket or something. Like I want it like in my hand. Like I've been playing a lot of
Good luck.
DS stuff recently, and like I would love a DS port of Rogue.
You could put it on something and use that giant GameCube controller that has the keyboard on it.
It's funny you say DS
like
because
that.
this game has been making me want to finally try out the She-Ren the Wanderer series.
Thank you for bringing up She-Ren the Wanderer. Yes, sir. I've been playing that too on DS, and
Really?
Yeah, stay tuned for season 12. No,
That was also on the
She-Ren
short
the
list.
Yeah. Just for the record, have you guys started your season 12 list yet?
Actually, I think I have one game.
I knew it. Is that a yes from you too, Mark?
No, I haven't even.
I couldn't tell if the grin was
Confirmed.
Like, also
One-
or just like
One game. And the only reason I wrote it down is because I would never remember to think about it.
to be fair, I only have 6 so far. But it's getting
I
good.
think you're missing the
But
zero
yeah,
there.
She-Ren the Wanderers.
Tough to
They're
make a
good.
new
They're all-
short list when they're all in the last one.
And those are all. I mean that you've got the Mystery Dungeon series with. I think some of the most famous ones are the Pokemon ones or the Chocobo one.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of games that are like Rogue that are worth exploring. But this one I was just, genuinely excited to get into this year. I don't know. Final thoughts on Rogue? I don't know what more to say on it.
I'll start.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting. I think you should preface yourself and like just to be aware of what you're getting yourself into before playing it. I will say that this is typically a genre that I'm not interested in. It's just not for me. But I think a lot of turn-based things in general, I do struggle with a little bit here and there. But I think it was a mission accomplished, though, to play this because it has opened me up to be more accepting towards this genre. And like I just stated earlier, now I'm kind of curious to check out those She-Ren games or whatever. So I definitely have a better respect for it. I'm definitely a little bit more open to the possibility of playing more games like this in the future. So, good job.
Yeah, good job, Rogue. What was your like prior to this? I know you recently just had a roguelike kick with Dead Cells and some other things like it. Is that was that the only exposure to the genre, like that recent one, or did you have runs before where you were getting into stuff?
I'm trying. Definitely more recently, like Dead Cells was the most recent, but before that, I hopped in on the Hades train. When that was fresh. Before that, I think I messed a little bit with Rogue Legacy when you were playing it a lot.
Oh yeah,
back then.
Yeah.
I didn't get too far with it though.
Me neither.
I think outside of that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So it's definitely more of a recent thing for me. I don't know how you want to count Phantasy Star Online, because there isn't permadeaths, but the levels layouts are random. That's about as rogue as it gets, probably, with that game, though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not
you know.
really. Yeah, it's just not really a field that I really dived a lot into. If I have, it's only been like samples.
Matt, how about you?
Games or last word, or both?
I'm both. I guess maybe start with what games sort of painted your history with roguelikes, or
I would say probably Rogue Legacy is probably the first one I sunk a lot of time into that I can remember. Played a lot of that on. Actually, I played on both Vita and PS3. I think PS3, maybe a little PS4, because it was right in that time.
yeah, it was in that.
But yeah, I like dabbling in them. I just never stay around in them very long. Like it's a hard sprint, and then Frostpunk I think is one of the best examples of that.
Yeah.
I had a hard sprint where I think I played that game for 12 hours on one weekend, and I never touched it again. And I think that is a fantastic game. That's where that's where I'm at with a lot of them. Dead Cells, another one. 1 week I play that nonstop and I burn myself out. I think it's that thing of like I feel like I get to a point and then I die and it's like, oh man, I gotta get all the way back there. Are you kidding me? I just feel like I can never put the run back together. Probably most recently is probably Darkest Dungeon 2 is the one. Granted, it's not out fully, but early access. Another roguelike. I got to the final boss once and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna get back here because this game's tough as nails. I just go hard and flame out real fast. I feel like that's how these always work for me. But as far as this game, I said it earlier about the history lesson. I feel like this is like that, the equivalent of like a film student having to watch Citizen Kane to understand the classic before you can appreciate everything else. I feel like that's kind of what happened here. This is it's from a different era. It's not necessarily for me, but I understand it. And I can I can see where lessons have been learned and in the evolution of games and especially those in this genre. But yeah, it doesn't make me a better person. I don't know. It doesn't make me a better reviewer. I don't know. But it was cool to at least try it, even if it wasn't for me.
Dude, and it sounds like Mark is inspired to check out some other ones. Are there other things now that you're more inspired to seek out in the wake of playing Rogue?
Not really, because like I said, I'm willing to try them. I just never stick around in them for very long.
Yeah, I get that. I guess one final question, just kind of looking at what games have been created because of Rogue, but also what games have been adapted and given rogue-like tendencies. Is there a game franchise that you feel would be well suited as a roguelike?
Like, my mind instantly goes to, like, Nintendo for some reason. It's like, what would be interesting with those characters other than Pokemon, since they kind of already somewhat did it?
Yeah. I think the most straightforward one there would be Zelda, but it'd be cool to have, like a Pikmin roguelike.
My mind went to Wario.
Oh, yeah.
Don't know. I don't know how it would even work, but I like the idea for some reason of just, like, going through some weird, strange areas, and you're just trying to get all the money or something.
I was like, well, maybe it would be a rhythm-based thing, Wario, and then like, oh wait, they made Crypto the Necrodancer, and then they made what was it called? Something of Hyrule, Cadence. Of Hyrule.
Cadence of Hyrule. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so there kind of is a in a sense.
Yeah, in a way. A Mario roguelike would be interesting. I don't know how you do it with the
I
jump.
mean, hey, they have that Puzzles and Dragons inspired game.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
They'll find a way.
I'm feel like I'm going the opposite way with this. I'm trying to see or I'm trying to think of what can be instead of just what would be interesting. And my first thought, for whatever reason, is like Silent Hill, and the way you frame that is you're stuck in psychological hell and you have to keep repeating your way out.
Yeah,
you have to go through levels of shit, and get your way out, and then that's when you win.
No, yeah, I like that you're tying the story back into it. That's good. That's what Returnal did, right?
Oh, right, yeah, I fucking played Returnal.
Yeah.
That's a really good game. That's really good. That's another one. That's another one. I fucking loved it for a week, just never finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, yes. Yes, that's a really good game.
I will close by saying Sonic the Roguelike and move on.
Why? No.
My
God, no.
We're having a good episode, I gotta keep it all.
I said something nice about Sonic last week.
Fair, but
Matt's exhausted from it. He can't.
Yeah,
do it
no. You only
next
get like
year.
one of these a year. Like, have you
That's
talking
being
about his
generous.
best game last year? Just said is worth its place this year. Now I'm done for 2024.
Well, I think I kind of said my closing piece already. I feel good about where I'm at with Rogue. I think we can rank this thing. What do you think?
Let's do it.
I'm gonna go back to old school Matt here and just see where you guys land on this
Old
one,
school,
because
2 weeks ago.
I don't fucking know. I don't know where to put this. I could make an argument. I'm not going to, but I feel like an argument could be made for top 15. I feel like an argument could be made for the middle of this list. I feel like there could even be an argument for the gutter of this list. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it deserves to be in the gutter. I'm just saying there
never
is
saw
an
it
argument
at the,
there.
at the bottom.
Yeah, no.
I will say my initial spot like I usually do, and then I'll say after some thought where I moved it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Initial spot?
Yeah.
The new 53 between Lifeline and Billy Hatcher. Now, that sounds harsh, but I didn't mean it in a harsh way. Just objectively, just as a game,
Fair.
It's a little rough.
It is.
Age hasn't treated it well, so I'm just like, all right, would I play this again? Maybe not. I don't know. I think I would play Billy Hatcher again before going back into Rogue. That's just how I saw it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Then I was like, okay, it does feel low though. So I put it at the old familiar.
Devil's Crush?
Right beneath it. I think that's being a little more fair. At least for someone with my background.
I could do it.
I'm not going to turn down demonic pinball.
No, yeah. I could do it. I'm just trying to figure out if I like it over. I like it over Metal. I like it over Metal Gear.
It would feel weird to put it beneath Leon's gross lips. I don't feel right doing that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, funny, and as you were saying it, I think I laid in the same spot as you, because I was doing the same, because you said, I was like, yeah, what else would I play this over? And I was like, I'm never going to go back to either of those Game Boy games, but I would, all 3 of those Game Boy games.
Yeah.
And, but I would probably go back for a game of Devil's Crush before revisiting this. And I think that makes perfect sense right there.
Like, Rogue to me started overwhelming just because I just, just going in blindly, like you just don't know what to expect from this type of game. So it was a little fish out of water moment, but it's not a game that I'm opposed to learning, and it never stressed me out because of how the gameplay is, and it fit. Even though I played it probably the wrong way, I was never annoyed by it. I was just like, all right, let's just see how far I can go, and so that's that was my goal, and I did it. And
Yeah.
props to that, you know? Like, I don't know.
No, it's no, yeah, I think I like it there. It's just I rather play that. I think like I said, there's something I like here. It's just I don't, I'm just not coming back to this one.
No, I like the positioning of this. It feels like it's
Right.
it's. I know it's not in the direct middle of our list, but it's right in that little.
You're putting it above Devil's Crush?
Oh, I'm so sorry. That was a mistake. Didn't mean to do that.
Oh, okay, that was just.
All
No,
right, well,
I
we
clicked
put
and
it
dragged
above
the
there.
wrong-
I'm going to argue for Pegels.
Nah, I clicked and dragged the wrong thing. My bad. Yeah, there we go. No, that works. Because it is, and once you do get into it, I really did enjoy like the where my brain was taking things. I'd like to, and maybe I should try one of the later ports of it that added, graphics and things, because maybe that's just what it was. But I don't know. I saw what their version of the what was the Aqua? Shoot, Aqua. You know what I'm talking about?
The octopus thing, or are you talking about something else?
No. Hold on, Aqua Tour.
Oh yeah,
That was
yeah.
In my head, I had like a cool, I don't even know what, but all gone out of, like, I can't even remember what I liked or thought and imagined, because the depiction I saw later was water in the shape of a seal. Like, there's just a seal that attacked you, or rusted your armor, rather. So yeah, I don't, but also I love that emus were in the game. We never really
that threw me off.
Well, I mean, what else are you gonna put for E?
But, like, in a funny way. I don't know. Evil something.
elf boy.
I mean,
Yeah.
Good. Elephant.
Well, there you have it with Rogue, our 42nd ranked game. Well, our number 42 on the list. We'll call it that.
I wonder how many times we've said that.
Probably a lot, yeah, at this point. But of our current 57, it is number 42. Next week, come back and join us for episode 500 as we play and explore the dark and terrifying world of Phasmophobia. Looking forward to that one and our time with it. We'll be playing that one together and then reporting back on our experiences and ranking, rating, etc. All that. So look forward to that in another week. And if you want to see the rest of the games that we're doing this month and the rest of the podcast episodes, go to thefreecheese.com. Check out our write-up for April. Discovery is our theme this month. So go check that out. Until next time, tell a friend about the Free Cheese Podcast. Write into podcast at thefreecheese.com and feel free to make a suggestion for a game for us to play to add to the list. We still have some room on the calendar for shorter games to play, or if you have a topic you'd like to hear us cover, podcast at thefreecheese.com. And we'll look into that. Other than that, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener, for listening. Goodbye.